Alright, how's everybody doing? This is Madison with another video. I'm still in Judges, so I'll be continuing that. And obviously, I told you about how basically, it's cycles of cycles of sin. The Lord, brings someone to bring them out. The Lord basically leaves them for the enemies, and of course, the Lord calls upon someone to deliver them, and then they go back and forth, and it's a round and round cycle. So last video I was talking about how Gideon, the Lord sent him when his people, the Israelites, started worshiping idols again, worshiping Baal, and were prostituting themselves. He delivered them. Now, mind you, he had 70 sons, so he was fruitful and multiplied. He had that down to a science. So one of his sons, Abimelech, he was, of course, out of 70 sons, there's always a bad seed somewhere, right? So, long story short, he had went into a land called Shechem, and what he did was he killed all 70 of his half brothers just to rule over that land. Cold-hearted guy. He basically kind of talked his uncles. They were basically overseeing that land and ruling that land. So he kind of not made a wage, or just kind of talked them into it. So he kept a lot of bad, a lot of negativity around him. He was a negative dude. He was all for himself. A lot of pride. And what happened was, he reaped what he sowed. Like you reap what you sow in life. He wound up getting killed. Shechem turned against Abimelech, and he wound up getting killed. A stone had crushed his skull. So in the end, was it worth it? No, because now you killed your generation for just to be a ruler over the land, and also you lost your own life. So with that being said, I'll talk a little bit about some more of the judges in Israel. These are all of them. It was Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Tola, Gideon, Deborah, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan, Samson, Arden, and Elon. Now, before I go any further, first, shortly after Gideon became judge, Tola was judge. Okay, basically these are people who God called to, lead Israel. Okay, and there were so many of them. So I'm going to be talking about though mainly Samson and his story. But it was Tola, then it was Jair, and like I said, there's another person, Jair. He had 30 sons who rode 30 donkeys, and they owned 30 towns. So that's kind of leaving the legacy right there. Then what happened shortly after that, of course, was Israel was oppressed. They were taken over by the Ammonites, and Jephthah was the new judge. Okay, he was a great warrior. His wife had several sons. Okay, now what happened was the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and what he said was, what Jephthah said, he made a vow to the Lord. He said, if you give me victory over the Ammonites, I'll give it. He said he will give to the Lord whatever comes out of his house. To meet him when he returns in triumph, he would sacrifice it as a burnt offering. So long story short, the Lord gave him victory, okay, and he destroyed 22 towns. Well, he destroyed about 20 towns, okay, and defeated the Ammonites. Now, when he returned home, who came out to meet him? His daughter. So he had to what? He had to give his only daughter, his one and only child. He had no other sons or daughters. So he had to give his one and only child to who? To God as a sacrifice. Because once you make a vow to the Lord, you can't take it back. So she said, if you made a vow, you must do what you vowed to. So he just wanted to go up, of course, and he sent her away for 2 months, and they went in the hills, because she knew that she was going to die a virgin, never have children. So she was mad. His daughter was mad, and when she returned home, his father had to keep the vow he made. So she died a virgin, and that's basically what happened. So that's kind of it's kind of victory and loss at the same time, because even though the Lord gave him victory, he made a vow that he would give whatever came out of his house as a sacrifice offering to the Lord. So now what happened was the people of Ephraim, they were fighting against Jephthah, and of course he was killed. And then there was 3 more judges, okay, before Samson. It was Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon. So that was basically now Abdon, once again, back in biblical times, these people had as far as being ye fruitful and multiply, they had it down to a science. And what I mean by that is, making a lot of babies. Okay, now Abdon had 40 sons and 30 grandsons. So that's what I mean. It's just of course it seems like it's an epidemic now, even more. We got grandparents at 30 years old, but I'm saying back in biblical times, You know, be fruitful, multiply. The Lord said it, but you know that was a lot. So now we here we are with Samson. Now it just so happened that once again the Israel I don't know why they keep being hard headed. They once again they were evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord this time he handed them over to the Philistines. So he oppressed them for 40 years. So imagine you and your whole town and y'all being held captive against you know, y'all enslaved to another town, keeping y'all, you know, enslaved for 40 years. So that's a long time. So a man named Manoah lived in the town, and basically his wife couldn't give birth, right? So the angel of the Lord came down, and he said, you know, that she would have a son. So basically she was barren, she couldn't have a child. So of course the Lord came through again, and he said who would give birth to a son, and also not just give birth to a son, but her son would basically lead the Israelites out of captivity, you know, out of being enslaved from the Philistines. So she said he would be dedicated to God as a Nazarite. Now God, as far as I'm concerned, was a Nazarite, and he would begin to rescue Israel. So what he also said was not to cut his hair, because that was his strength. Okay, so basically he was born, and he was strong. Okay, he was stronger than more than you can know. You know, he was basically a strong man, Samson, and it was some stories that he was known for. For one, they were going, I believe, to get some food, and he ripped the lion's a giant lion came to try to attack him, and he ripped the lion's jaws apart with his bare hands. So I mean, somebody could do that with their bare hands. That's pure strength. Okay, so what happened was he wanted to basically he wanted to marry someone from the other tribe. Okay, and of course his parents didn't approve of that. But actually though, you know, they wound up getting married, from what I understand. So what happened was he had a little riddle. Before I get in the story, he had a little riddle. So this was before this girl right here, Delilah. That's Delilah. But basically, he had a riddle, and what he said was, he said, well, this was a celebration of the wedding, so to speak. So he said, if you could figure it out and find it out, then he would give 30 sheets and 30 chains of garments. Otherwise, you know, they would have to give him that. So what happened was, you know, they had 7 days, and of course he wasn't telling anybody anything. So his wife started to get mad, and you know, she started to get frustrated. So she wound up, you know, asking him what's the answer. So what happened was she wound up telling her peoples what the answer was. So of course, he got extremely pissed off, and he killed 30 men, took their belongings, and gave their clothing to the men who solved the riddle. Okay, so he was furious. Okay, he went back home to live with his mom and his mother, and his wife was given in marriage to the man who had been Samson's best man at the wedding. So can you imagine that at your own wedding, you know, you're getting ready to get married or whatever the case may be, and okay, I guess you know, you got a little joke, and you know, your wife, your soon-to-be wife or whatever the case may be, she basically kind of ruined your plans, and you know, she kind of spilled the beans, okay, and told everybody else. So it's like, you know how you tell somebody a secret, and they don't, you know, they wind up spilling the beans. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation. And not only that, the best man took his wife, and he had to leave. He left to go home wifeless, and you know, of course, I'm pretty sure he was angry, you know. So he still had vengeance against the Philistines, okay. So what he did was he caught 300 foxes, and he tied their tails together, and he lit a torch on fire, and they started destroying all the crops and lands of the Philistines. So he was, you know, that was kind of his revenge. And also, what happened was 3,000 men went down to get him, okay, at a cave. He was hiding in a cave. So basically, they tied him up, and they actually found him, okay. And of course, with his strength, if somebody could break a lion's jaws, you know, with his bare hands, what's a rope gonna do, right? So I mean, of course, you should know that. That's common sense. So long story short, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and of course he snapped the ropes, and you know, they fell off his wrist. And what happened was he took the jawbone. He took the jawbone of a recently killed donkey. Now, if you look at, like you say, if you watch any of them old National Geographic shows, or basically like say a fossil, you know, a jawbone. So imagine one person taking a jawbone and killing 1,000 people. So he took the jawbone, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he killed 1,000 people with it. So this was a strong man. 1,000 men with a jawbone. That's a force to reckon with, you know. So what happened was, you know, after that, you know, he basically, you know, he needed to find some thirst and some water. So the Lord basically had he caused water to come out the ground. Okay, so God was leading him along his journey, and he ruled Israel for 20 years when the Philistines dominated the land. So what happened next was he fell in love. Basically, he had slept with a prostitute, and then he was a little player too, I guess you could say. And then he fell in love with a woman named Delilah. Now she lived in another valley. So what happened was she kept on she basically the Philistines brought her Delilah to come and kind of be newsy, kind of play the little role or whatever. I put a beautiful woman in front of your face to seduce you, and basically try to get the best of you, learn your weaknesses and strengths and all of that, go from there. So long story short, he wasn't falling for it at first, but basically he kind of gave in to a Samson. Now remember I told you earlier that his hair was his strength, so she kept asking him, what's your strength and everything like that. So what happened next is he finally spilled the beans, right? So why did you do that? So of course what happened? She cut his hair. Now she cut his hair, they captured him, right? After she cut his hair, they captured him and they gouged his eyes out. So now he was bound. He was basically bound with chains and forced to grain in the prison. So that's what happens. You got to be careful. So now he asked the Lord. This was his final victory. Okay. Now the Philistine rulers, they were saying, yeah, they were victorious. They thought they were. Okay. Now of course, what did he do? And what did we all do as believers? When things happen, we call on the Lord. So he prayed. The house was full of about 3,000 men and women on the roof. Okay. So Samson prayed to the Lord one more time to give him strength to avenge the Philistines for his 2 eyes being taken out. So what did the Lord do? The Lord gave him the strength. Okay, he gave him the strength to do that. So he said, strengthen me one more time, Lord. So he put his hands on the 2 centers that held up the temple. And this basically was it right here. Okay, it was kind of at the beginning, but this basically what happened. So he took down the whole temple with his bare hands because the Lord gave him strength. And he killed more people than he did during his entire lifetime. So that was his last victory, and basically his brothers and relatives went down to his body and took him back home and buried him, okay, with his father, and he ruled Israel for 20 years. So that basically shows, the power of God in somebody. Basically the Lord, of course, when you think about, just to touch topics, the monks, from what I understand, I know they have them long ponytails. That's like their strength. Well, in this case, a Nazarite, Samson was a Nazarite, and of course his mom was barren. Okay, she couldn't conceive, she couldn't give birth to a child, but the Lord said okay, and they were in captivity. Okay, they basically were being disobedient to the Lord around that time. So of course, what does the Lord do? He uses, he works in mysterious ways. So he came and heard a cry, answered a cry, blessed them, took them out of captivity, and led them to victory. And of course, he used Samson for his purpose and his will, and that he basically was he was a strong man. Okay, the Lord gave him strength. Okay, but obviously you can see how he fell for a trick, a seduction, as the Philistines used some bait. It's just like throwing a fish hook out there for some fish, and you throw the bait in the water, see if you're gonna get some fish. And sometimes that bait may catch it. So basically, they used Delilah as a bait for him, and he fell right into it. Fell right into the trap. They took his eyes out. He was going back and forth with them, but he killed a lot of them. For somebody to take a jawbone of a donkey and kill 1,000 people, that's kind of unheard of. I can't see nobody doing that nowadays. Maybe in a movie, but not in real life. So that just shows you right there. With God, all things are possible. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, we all got different gifts and abilities, and it's important to use all those gifts and abilities before you go to the grave, because there's a lot of people sitting in the grave right now. Mind you, it's 150,000 people that die each and every day. So as far as I'm concerned, you want to use your gifts and abilities before it's your time to go, because when it's your time to go, it's nothing you can do about it. That's it. So that's what I strongly consider. Now it's a little bit more I want to talk about in Judges that continue on after Samson's death and his his journey and his final victory with the Lord. So just stay tuned for the next video. Until then, everybody stay blessed, stay safe, and stay prayed up, and enjoy the rest of your day.